Snow rests heavy on the woods of Timberholt. Something lives in these woods. Not an animal, not a man. It feeds on whoever wanders too far. Today is Christmas Eve. An old man returns to the woods just as he has every year. He follows the old recipe, the one they call the not deer stew. The game begins with us learning to bring up our recipe book, which contains the not deer stew. The first step is to build a fire, which states, gather 6 logs from the forest, stack and light them. I immediately began collecting the logs scattered throughout the forest and bringing them back to the campfire. As I was collecting the logs one at a time, I noticed what looked to be the skeletal pelvis of someone who had long met their end here. I didn't think much of it since I was purely focused on gathering logs for the campfire. Once I brought the last log, I started the fire to start heating up the pot to begin the stew. Second step of the recipe was to begin the stew, which states, melt 6 snowballs in the pot. After learning how to make them, I threw the 6 snowballs needed to create the water for the stew. A simple task I was able to complete right by the campfire. Third step was to add the vegetables. I needed 3 whole potatoes, 2 whole carrots, and 1 whole onion. It looks like I already had these ingredients prepared in the table across from me, so I brought each one to the pot. Fourth step was to add the mushrooms. I needed to search the woods for some wild mushrooms, so I started in one direction of the stove and made my way in a clockwise direction. As I explored the woods, there were scattered bones everywhere, as if some major battle happened here, and these are the remains of those who have fallen. I even came across what may have been someone's grave, but it is only when I stand by the grave, I hear some sort of heavy breathing. Eventually, I found the wild mushrooms, which was arranged in a circle. Inside the circle, there was no snow, a very strange phenomenon since everywhere else is covered in snow. But I had mushrooms to take back to the campfire. Fifth step was to add glowing herbs. According to the recipe, as these herbs heat up, they will call the not deer to me. As soon as I began searching for the glowing herbs, I saw a glowing ball off in the distance. As I got closer, the glowing ball floated quickly to the other direction. That glowing ball may have answered why there was no snow inside the mushroom circle. Things were getting stranger, so I took a moment to survey my surroundings to see if I can spot anything else. With everything looking clear, I gathered the 2 required glowing herbs for the stew. The next step was to sit and wait and hunt. This was the moment. I had to sit on the log and wait for the not deer to come from behind. This creature would run away if I turned too soon, so I had to have patience in order to succeed. The anticipation was killing me though. I didn't know what would signal me that the not deer was here. Every time I heard some sort of steps pressing down on snow, I turned around only for there to be nothing. So I got comfortable and waited. Eventually, I started to hear steps getting louder behind me, and I turned around as soon as I heard wild breathing. But unfortunately, I wasn't quick enough. I took a shot at the not deer, but it quickly ended me on that log. A message for the bad ending appeared. The forest is quiet again. In these woods, the not deer takes anyone who wandered too far. Today, it was the old man. What remains of him lies scattered throughout the Timberholt woods. This family celebrates Snow Christmas this year. I was determined to taste that not deer stew, so I began again. It took me a few tries as the not deer was quick and even tried to crawl low on the floor to avoid my shots. But in the end, I was indeed the hunter and not the hunted. I missed some shots, but the landed ones are the ones that mattered. The not deer laid on the ground, and so I harvested the meat I was looking for my stew. I took a moment to examine the not deer. It had pitch black skin and bloodshot eyes. This was a deer which stood on its hind legs. As I carried the not deer shoulder meat to the stew, I kept looking back, thinking it would get back up and end me before I can get to the stew. Once I put the meat in the pot, I read the last step of the recipe, which was not so much an ingredient, but a warning to those who had successfully made the not deer stew. I was to listen for the not deer. When you hear the call, the stew is done. A new not deer is born. Leave the forest immediately. Share the stew with others. Serve hot with homemade bread. And as the recipe predicted, I heard the not deer call, so I went to the car and left the woods. The old man returns with the stew. The family gathers. They eat, they sing, they dance. Later, he tucks his grandchildren into warm beds as the smell of the Mothman cake drifts through the house. This tradition lasted for generations, until the Great Not Deer Massacre of 1986. But that is a story for another time. This game has some very interesting elements to me. I get the hint that we're people of cryptid hunters who discovered how to make fine meals from the dangerous and rare creatures in the woods. A thought came to mind about the not deer, that the breathing I heard from it was very similar to the breathing I heard from the grave that I found in the woods. I can't help but believe that the not deer in this game were once people who had died and been buried in the forest. Many people get lost and die in the forest, so this is just the forest making use of those extra resources left by man to get rid of anyone who wanders too far into the woods. But that's just a little speculation for me. This game really turned some gears in my head for some theories, and I would love to see more, especially a game that expands on that great not deer massacre. The game can be found on itch.io, which I can link in the description below. I hope you all enjoyed that video, and I will catch you all later.